Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about Josh Dubin making his disgraceful return to the Joe Rogan Experience to explain what happened with Sheldon Johnson, who, if you guys don't remember, is the person that Josh Dubin himself lobbied for his release early from his prison sentence. He ended up getting out due to allegations of evil white racism playing a part in his sentence, and then after he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, a month later, he brutally murdered somebody. He killed him, dismembered the body, and by the way, he is captured on surveillance video transporting items where the body parts are contained and wearing a wig, trying to disguise himself from said surveillance video. So Josh Dubin, who called this guy a miracle...
I know I've said this before, and it probably sounds repetitive, but another miracle sitting to my right, just like a marvelous human being who was basically told by a judge, by an African-American judge, that you don't matter.
Has a little bit of egg on his face, to say the least, due to the fact that he was championing this guy as a reformed criminal, as somebody that he advocated for, and then he turned around and repeated the exact same behavior that the original judge that did the sentencing warned about, and now he's on Joe Rogan to explain away his actions. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
So I guess we just get right into it. The last case that we talked about, we had a very unfortunate incident happen after the podcast, about a month later.
Yeah.
The gentleman beheaded somebody.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly.
So right off the bat, we have an absolutely terrible start to this podcast where Joe Rogan says, hey, look, while he's smiling, the last guy that you brought on this program as an example of a reformed person in the criminal justice system ended up killing somebody, ended up murdering somebody. And Josh Dubin says allegedly, which, by the way, is technically the appropriate thing to say when somebody has yet to be convicted. And Joe Rogan laughs because the evidence is so overwhelming that he thinks Josh Dubin is telling a joke. But let's be clear, this is no laughing matter. Sheldon Johnson went into this apartment, apparently shot this guy execution style in the apartment, and then proceeded to dismember the body for revenge, despite the fact that he had every advantage once he got out of prison, including a stable job, including the public on his side, because the man was a thug and a criminal through and through. Now, we gotta get into more of this non-apology from Josh Dubin, because he needs to be raked over the coals for this. Sheldon Johnson needs to be stapled to his forehead, because the way that he advocated for this guy is so disgusting and humiliating. And by the way, I need to make this 100% clear. They say that Sheldon Johnson was the only guilty person that he brought on the Rogan program.
Well, he was the only guy that you had ever brought in that was actually guilty, that you felt was in jail for too long.
But all of the people, 100% of the people that Josh Dubin advocates for on the Joe Rogan Experience are in fact guilty. In fact, he's going to name people like Rodney Reed and other people in this particular video that he's trying to get out because he's a white guilted coward.
I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I started calling him guilty before he has a trial. But
of course,
based on the surveillance,
it doesn't look good.
What do they say in Texas? It ain't too shiny.
It's so crazy because, we went out with him that evening. We brought him to the comedy club. He was hanging out with us in the green room. And then the news broke. And then the comics were all like, hey, man, what the fuck? What the fuck are you doing bringing that guy around? I'm like, well, we didn't know.
I mean...
Who could have known he was going to do that other than him?
I'm as shocked over it now as I was in the moment.
So this is one of the things that genuinely pisses me off when they say, who could have possibly known that Sheldon Johnson would have done something like this? Who could have possibly detected that this guy was a serious ongoing threat to society? And the fact of the matter is, the person who would have known, the person who did know, was the judge, the black judge, by the way, who gave the initial sentence to Sheldon Johnson way back when. By the way, this is the same judge that these bunch of idiots refer to as a house N-word for being a black guy who threw another black guy's life away. Don't believe me? It was on the podcast.
And the twist on Sheldon's story that I was like a head scratcher to me that I asked him about was the judge that sentenced him is a black man. And, I said to Sheldon, did that ever strike you as, here's a African-American judge that looks at this young black kid and should understand his circumstances and have a better understanding of it and not want to throw away his life. And I said, so what do you do with that fact? And Sheldon said, well, I'll let you respond to it because he said something to me that I didn't really. This judge now, sits as a federal judge in the Southern District of New York. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. It just seems so strange to me that is who, said this guy's not worthy of redemption.
And I think it goes back even farther than that, right? When you go back all the way into slavery, you had the house and the field. Excuse my language for using those words, right?
You could use them, we can't.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And that the idea of the guy who was in the house, he was harder on his own people, his fellow slaves, than some of the overseers may have been, or the slave masters.
When you watch that clip, you get an absolutely excellent peek into the psyche that is the white guilted coward known as Josh Dubin, because he's like, how could a black man, a black person, not be in favor of a black criminal? How could a black man think that a black criminal with a repeat violent history deserves to be locked up for that violent history? And then you have Sheldon Johnson not taking any responsibility for his previous actions, again referring to him as a house N-word, as if him being a criminal, him being a thug, has something to do with slavery times, and we need to go back to that. And you just see Josh Dubin say, look, I can't say that, but you could say it, and I totally understand how you feel. I empathize with you. Oh my God, Sheldon Johnson is the same age as me, and he actually spent so much time incarcerated, and I didn't. The difference is Sheldon Johnson was convicted of attempted murder, which we're downplaying throughout this whole segment, but oh wow, it's so sad what happened to this man during his life. And to be clear, the signs were obvious during this podcast that this was a dangerous individual. He took no accountability for what he did. And by the way, part of the reason why he was able to get away with taking no accountability is because Josh Dubin never gave a damn about his victims and was more interested in downplaying the action. He said that Sheldon Johnson was convicted and sent away for a long period of time, 50 years, because Sheldon Johnson gave somebody just 2 stitches, 2 baby little stitches.
I know I've said this before, and it probably sounds repetitive, but another miracle sitting to my right, just like a marvelous human being who was basically told by a judge, by an African-American judge, that you don't matter, you don't count, and I'm going to throw your life away for a crime in which the victim received 2 stitches, and on a second offense, his first offense being a gun possession charge. So I will say this, that he received a sentence that far eclipses a sentence that would be commonly doled out for murder or manslaughter. So with that, here's Sheldon.
Sheldon, how long have you been out for?
Going on 9 months. I got out May 4th.
And you were in for 25?
25 years and 5 months.
For 2 stitches.
2 stitches.
However, when you listen to the story of Sheldon Johnson, what you realize is that is 100% false, inaccurate, wrong, not even close. In fact, he actually admits to multiple different assaults of somebody who owed him drug money and his girlfriend and a robbery. And by the way, we're going to get into something else a little bit later, but just let me play that for you and tell me if you think this is just 2 stitches.
And the case that you were arrested for got dismissed.
Got dismissed.
Right,
I got
so
acquitted.
Then you come home.
So then I come home and, I need my money. I need my money. It's just me being honest. It's just me being straight. I gave you something and we had an understanding that you were going to pay me. And when I came home, when I finally located this particular individual, he had his girlfriend with him. And this guy owed me $5,000 for some drugs that I had gave him on consignment. I gave him an eighth of a kilo, which is 125 grams of cocaine. And when I saw him, he had a bunch of jewelry on. He was with his girlfriend. She had a bunch of jewelry on. I said, hey, man, where's my money at? Oh, I was going to pay you. And as far as I was concerned, his jury was even. So I robbed him, and I took his jury. And his girlfriend happened to be there, and unfortunately, she got caught up in the situation. I had a bunch of young guys with me, and they robbed her as well. And he got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he got 2 stitches. And they gave me 25 years for that case.
Now, in addition to that particular crime, because Sheldon Johnson was a repeat offender, he did something similar to a Latino person that he claimed wasn't hurt at all by those actions. Nobody got hurt, but then goes on to say, okay, well, he got roughed up a little bit.
Another guy that I ran into, he also owed me some money. He owed me $7,000, and it kind of went along the same ways. He was selling drugs out of an auto parts store. He was a Spanish guy. I got word that this is where he was at, and he was selling drugs, and I was going to get my money. And the same circumstances kind of ensued. So, hey, what's going on? You know, reading in between the lines and outside the margins without really going into all of the details, I robbed him because he owed me $7,000.
Did he get physically hurt?
No. He didn't get touched. Got roughed up a little bit, but there was no physical harm, nothing. Going back to morals and values and principles, right? In my mind, he was fair game. He's selling drugs. I'm selling drugs. You owe me money. I came to take what you have.
So yeah, Sheldon Johnson is a guy who has a violent repeat history, takes no accountability for his actions. He was actually a high-ranking member of the Blood Gang, and one of the ways that these two factors end up combining is the way that he described rising up through the ranks of the Bloods. And I just want to play that for you because the way that Sheldon Johnson told it, he basically stumbled into the leadership of a prolific violent gang in the city of New York.
I was blood. I was a gang member. This is where the cut comes from on my face. I have a bunch of stab marks from just being in those environments and being on Rikers Island and just warring with other rival gangs, mostly Latin Kings and Inetas. And I would just stand there, and eventually I just slowly moved up the ranks, and I became this person that I feel like I was never meant to be. But because of the conditions and because of where I was at and because of what I saw, what I was exposed to, made me into someone else.
So yeah, this is the guy that Josh Dubin sought out, talked to, advocated for, and got released. This obvious criminal who takes no accountability for his own actions, who is clearly guilty, clearly an ongoing threat to society, and now he wants you to feel bad for him because he advocated for somebody to be released. That person was released, and now somebody is dead due to the actions of Josh Dubin.
I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I know you and I have discussed it privately, and I kind of went into a hole after this. This didn't happen to me. A lot of people say, I'm so sorry. But some people have said other things that weren't very nice. Yeah. But the people that I, regard their opinion were sorry that it didn't happen to me. My first thought was, I had 2 thoughts, was that poor guy that got killed. And it was a gruesome murder. It wasn't just beheaded. I think he was dismembered completely.
Well, he was trying to get rid of the body, right?
Allegedly. And my first thought was for him and his family. And then I think my second and third thought, maybe in tandem, was this tore down 50 years of work that a lot of people have fought really hard for and really need. And I felt like I let you down.
So Josh Dubin says, oh my God, I was so sad when I found out. I think it's going to undo 50 years of good work of the Innocence Project, which hasn't been around for that long. But to be clear, the Innocence Project never did good work. This is exactly the principles that it was founded on, which is getting people who are guilty off. Again, one of the founders of the Innocence Project was an attorney, Barry Schneck, for the O.J. Simpson case. That is what inspired him to get into this work, to get criminals, disproportionately black criminals who are guilty, off scot-free for those crimes. So he is just following in a long line of footsteps of other Innocence fraudsters in this regard. And as for Joe Rogan, you guys know I do like Joe Rogan. I appreciate him and all that, all the different guests that he's had on his podcast.
You've given us an amazing platform to get stories out for people that really need help. I think we've made a ton of progress. We've got some exonerations as a direct result of this.
Yeah,
show.
you didn't let me down at all.
No,
I didn't. I appreciate that you felt like that. It didn't feel like that to me at all.
This is obviously a blind spot for him because he has a guy who came onto his program, labeled somebody rehabilitated, a miracle, someone that he advocated for, and yet Joe Rogan looks at this man in the face and says, hey man, you didn't let me down. I understand. No big deal. Bygones be bygones. I'm going to trust you going forward and say that all the other people that you brought on, your judgment was totally sound. You were definitely 100% correct on them. And they were definitely not guilty. This was just a one-off. This was just no big deal. But the fact of the matter is, this is anything but no big deal and anything but a one-off. Josh Dubin doesn't give a damn if these people are guilty. He is so racked with white guilt. He's such a coward in that regard that he is going to continue to advocate for these fringe cases, for guilty people to get out, and then brag about the good work that he's doing, even though he's doing anything but.
And I think that where I've landed is that he didn't let me down. He didn't look, I was the public face of his resentencing. There was a lot of great people involved. And it wasn't just from the defense side. The Center for Appellate Litigation had some amazing people working on his case. The District Attorney of Manhattan agreed to this. So on paper, even in their personal interactions with him, there was nothing that raised a red flag for anyone.
So Josh Dubin's like, listen, even though I was the public face of this guy's resentencing, I was the public face of telling everybody that this guy was rehabilitated, a stand-up person, 100% an innocent baby angel Aladdin. The fact of the matter is, there were a lot of good people that worked on this particular case that were totally let down. And not just on the defensive side, but on the prosecution side. You have this appellate litigation organization that's on the prosecution side. And of course, you have the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. And the idea that Alvin Bragg let out a criminal who was definitely prone to reoffend, I'm sure to everybody out there in my audience is absolutely shocking. Of course it's not shocking. All of these people, everybody involved, are the pro-criminal types, are the ones that simp for criminals, that think that whenever a black person commits a crime and is held accountable for their actions that they committed, there must be evil white racism afoot. So yeah, everybody that he just named, those are all people to watch out for. Those are all red flags, Joe Rogan, if you're listening, of bad people with bad intent who think criminals are innocent baby angel Aladdins, who also are under the impression that the system is evil white racism filled with evil white racists, and therefore we can't trust any of the outcomes of their cases, even in obvious ones like this. And this is the thing. This guy learned absolutely nothing from this. And he talks about how, oh, if I felt 1% responsible for this, then I would just destroy myself.
No one could have imagined what's in the dark recesses of that man's soul. Whether it's, his group home upbringing and abuse, the prison experience. It's not to make an excuse. He did it. If he did it. If he's convicted and he did it, that's on him. What I'm guilty of is giving a guy a second chance. And I'm why am I reluctant to say this? I can't apologize for giving someone a second chance and then, they squander it. All I can do is say, what could I have done better?
To be clear, Josh Dubin, you advocated for this man's release. Sheldon Johnson was released because of you, and then he committed a murder after you paraded him around as an example of a victim of an evil white racist system, even though his case had nothing to do with white people. Again, it's absolutely disgusting what this man did. Nobody should ever let him live it down because he decided that a case that involved a black criminal, a black thug, a black gangbanger who happened to stumble into the leadership of the Bloods, according to him, assaulting and robbing a black man and his girlfriend, then assaulted and robbed a Latino man based on a drug deal gone wrong, that guy, in that particular instance, even though he was sentenced by a black judge, was somehow the victim of white people. That is the level of white guilt that is going on in Josh Dubin's head. That is how this man thinks. He's like, oh crap, a black man did something bad? Must be a white person somewhere nearby that I can blame because I'm a white guilted coward. That is exactly who Josh Dubin is. And to be clear, there were dire consequences for this guy's mindset. Dire consequences for his advocacy. A man is dead because Josh Dubin saw Sheldon Johnson, ignored each and every red flag, and decided that he deserved a second chance. He deserved a fifth chance because Sheldon Johnson had been arrested over and over and over again. He got multiple chances, and when he used those chances up, that's why a judge convicted him and sentenced him for such a long period of time. But this guy's gonna say, oh, what a baby angel. Oh my God, it was so sad. You know, we need some mental health counseling. I should have been on Sheldon Johnson to go in for that mental health counseling.
I don't want to offer this as an excuse, but what it has caused me to do is reevaluate and say, look, maybe I need to take a much closer look at what sort of mental health counseling these folks are getting. Like Sheldon, I arranged for him to be speaking to a trauma therapist. Should I have been on him more to be going to those appointments? Maybe.
Yeah, here's a crazy idea, Josh Dubin. Before you advocate for somebody, before you get them out, before they murder somebody, then you can get on them for mental health counseling. Maybe introduce that into the prison that he was served. Maybe look at the evaluation of this person's character, because anyone who watched that previous podcast, anybody who listened to Sheldon Johnson knew 100% that he was blaming everyone else for his actions, everything else for his actions, and not taking accountability. One of the most embarrassing clips in that Joe Rogan podcast is when Sheldon Johnson talks about his son, who, by the way, also killed somebody, and he describes it like this.
And you end up making really, really bad decisions that can cost you for the rest of your life. Like my son, when he got into a fight with an Asian guy. They called him the Columbia Law student killer, right? He gets into a fight with this Chinese guy. And this is not to take away anything from that man's family. And, you know, as a man, as his father, I felt some type of way. But the guy goes into the street and gets hit by a car, and he dies. But this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake.
So first of all, to give you an idea of how little Sheldon Johnson cares about the victim and the victim's family, he didn't even know that that guy who was murdered, the 24-year-old, he was actually a statistics student at Columbia University, not a law student. And he claims that his 14-year-old black son ended up getting into a fight, a mutual combat situation with this person. And the crazy thing about this, other than the idea that a 24-year-old statistics student at Columbia University of Chinese descent was just scrapping in mutual combat with a 14-year-old black kid, is that when you listen to the account of the 14-year-old black kid, what you realize is that child at the time took more accountability for his actions than Sheldon Johnson, the boy's father. Because guess what? It turns out that that black kid ended up attacking this person. He was out with a group of friends. They were on their way to get Chinese food, and according to them, they wanted to mess around and have a good time. So Sheldon Johnson's boy, his innocent little baby boy, decided it would be a good idea to target an Asian individual, stop me if you've heard this one before, sucker punch him, and then when he fled the mob of black youths that were attacking him, he ran into the street, got hit by an SUV, and was killed. This means that his son is a murderer. He died as a consequence of a felony assault that him and his gang of friends were committing, and no, in no way, shape, or form was this Asian guy in a normal, ordinary fight with him. Absurd in every possible way, but even more absurd is that Josh Dubin heard this man talk like this repeatedly, and no red flags went off. Why? Because, oh my God, Sheldon Johnson had such a hard life. He had such a sad life. And you know what's even crazier about this? After the murder, after we know for sure that this guy was not rehabilitated, he's still bringing that nonsense up.
I mean, I have a deep understanding, I think, of what incarceration means. I mean, I read this book. I always get his name confused. Is it Henry Jack Abbott or Jack Henry Abbott? It's called In the Belly of the Beast, when I was in college. And it's a series of letters that this inmate wrote to Norman Mailer. It's a fascinating book. And about what incarceration does to somebody from the standpoint of the practical day-to-day, from the deep psychosis inducing confinement and everything else. And 2 days before the book was released and it was reviewed by the New York Times, the guy snapped and killed someone in the East Village. And no one will know what it is like to be in there.
So I would love to write Josh Dubin off as one of the dumbest people, one of the most white-guilted, pussified cowards that has ever existed on God's green earth. But the fact of the matter is, this guy has influence over the criminal justice system, and that makes him dangerous. But the idea that this idiot would tell a story of a book that inspired him to advocate for black criminals that are 100% guilty, and in that book, the guy was writing letters that he wrote during prison time, and before it was published, he actually turned around and murdered somebody else. And Josh Dubin's takeaway from this is that, wow, these people must be rehabilitated based on a book that was written by somebody who wasn't rehabilitated is insane. This man is ridiculous. This man is absolutely an idiot, but unfortunately, he has impact on our day-to-day lives. He's releasing criminals left and right based on the idea that they're the victim of circumstances, that they need help, that their lives are so sad that honestly, even though they murdered people, even though they butchered people, even though they hacked people up, you know what? It's really down to their lives in a group home. And just, wow, the carceral system is so bad. We should never send anybody to prison at all whatsoever. Now, Rogan ends up asking him what the circumstances of the crime actually were.
What was the circumstances with the guy that he allegedly killed?
And I think Josh Dubin's response is quite telling, quite informative of how weak of an individual this guy actually is.
I don't know if I'm doing it just because I'm distancing myself from it subconsciously, but I don't know all the circumstances.
If there was any sentence that perfectly distilled Josh Dubin's character, it would be that right there, where he's like, I haven't really looked into the details of this case because he doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to know the circumstances involving the man who is dead because of Josh Dubin, because Josh Dubin got him released, because Josh Dubin advocated for this killer, because Josh Dubin thought he was rehabilitated. Again, 100% coward. But to make matters even worse, to make matters even more horrible, he is now going to fling out an unsubstantiated rumor to defend Sheldon Johnson because he's still not done making excuses for this murderer, allegedly.
But apparently this was someone he knew from childhood and from in prison. I've heard rumors and, stories about the guy threatened his son to... he slashed Sheldon when they were in prison. I don't know if you remember, Sheldon had that big gash across his face. But I don't know. And I frankly don't want to know at this point because someone lost their life. And that, I think, unfortunately, for my mental health, I just wear that stuff.
So he just flings out that unsubstantiated rumor, again, defaming the victim of this particular crime, who, by the way, did have a criminal history as well. Let me make no mistake about reporting that to you. I'm not Josh Dubin. I'm not going to lie to you. But again, just think about the level of cowardice that you have to actually engage in. You're not going to face the consequences of your own actions. But if you heard a rumor that kind of mitigates what you did, what you allowed to happen, then you're just going to toss that out to an audience of millions of people because, why not? Why not just add more fuel to the fire? You already lied about Sheldon Johnson, allowed him to lie about his criminal history, lied about multiple people that you claim to be innocent and the victims of an evil white racist system. So you might as well just throw out some more nonsense, throw out some more rumors, kind of blame the victim in this particular scenario, take a little bit of the heat on you and say, wow, Sheldon Johnson, his son that was also a murderer, by the way, he was being threatened by this guy. Just so sad. Isn't this just a ridiculously sad tale for Sheldon Johnson, the murderer?
For better or for worse.
Well, if the guy really did slash his face, if you've been in literal mortal combat with a person and this person is allegedly threatening your son or whatever, there's only so much you can do to stop a person from seeking revenge.
Now, Joe Rogan ends up running with that rumor, and again, this is the perfect distillation of why it's so inappropriate to throw out rumors like this, because to be clear, this slashing, this scar that Sheldon Johnson had, that supposedly they're now pinning on the victim of this murder, happened decades ago. It was fully healed over. It was when he was in prison awaiting trial, or after he was convicted, shortly after, when he was getting into gang fights as a member of the Bloods. But there's one more particular clip that I want to get into right here, because Josh Dubin is very upset that people are calling him a race bait.
Yeah, you're a lot more forgiving and understanding than a lot of people were and have been about this. There's been two schools of thought in the reaction. I mean, I got pretty nasty hate mail, and I got a lot of words of encouragement. I think the hate mail outweighed the words of encouragement.
Always.
But
psychologically, always.
I mean, in substance, number, and probably psychologically.
Yeah.
But that shit just gives me fuel. If you're sending me, fuck you, you race baiter, you this, you that.
Race baiter?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of that.
How are you a race baiter?
By telling the truth about the state of race and the criminal justice system in this country.
So he's all mad that people are calling him a race baiter because he's just telling the truth about the state of the criminal justice system in the United States of America. And to be clear, Josh Dubin, you are a race baiter. The reason you're called a race baiter is because that's what you do. You took Sheldon Johnson, a career criminal, a blood gang member, advocated for him to be released based on the idea that he was a black man being oppressed by the system. You ran with that narrative. You let him lie not only about his cases, multiple cases, but lie about his son's murder of an innocent Columbia student that his son committed unprovoked and in no way, shape, or form was a fight. But then when you ran into an obstacle, when you ran into something that did not compute with you, which was a black judge that appropriately assessed Sheldon Johnson's case, you were like, this is so confusing. How can black man see black criminal and decide that black criminal needs a long sentence? You were shocked and chagrined that a judge who did everything right in his life can look at a black thug, a black criminal, a member of the blood gang, and say, wow, this guy did everything wrong in his life. He has a pattern, a repeat pattern of criminal behavior, and then sentence him appropriately. You were talking about this case, which again had nothing to do with white people, didn't exist in this case. Sheldon Johnson was attacking other black people, attacking Latino people, and decided to make it about white people being racist against black people. You see the actions of black criminals, black thugs, and you don't think that they have accountability, that they have agency in their own lives. You think that somewhere down the line, somewhere maybe under the skeleton's hand right here, maybe somewhere there is a white person doing some racism in the corner over there. And that motivates you. That's why you advocate for these people, because you had a very soft upbringing. You were not challenged throughout the course of your life. And now you don't like that label. You claim it's fuel to your fire.
That shit just gives me fuel. If you're sending me, fuck you, you race baiter, you this, you that. Oh, yeah, I got a lot of that.
Well, guess what, Josh Dubin? I'm the gas station, so pull up, tap your credit card against the machine, because I'm going to fuel you up throughout the whole course of this. Because make no mistake about it, each and every person that you have publicly advocated for, Julius Jones, Rodney Reed, Brian, whatever that guy's name was, who was the murderer who murdered a child in Jamaica, Queens back in the 90s, they're all guilty. Your white guilt, your cowardice ends up making you advocate for them, trying to get them out, and we're sick of it. We're sick of this nonsense, and you absolutely are responsible for the death of the victim in this case. You advocated for Sheldon Johnson to be released. You used your fame, your notoriety to go to the Manhattan District Attorney's office, say that this guy was an innocent baby angel victimized by the racist system, and because of you, a man was killed. A man was butchered by Sheldon Johnson, and you for damn sure are gonna have this hang around the neck of you for the rest of your life. You deserve this, and in a just world, Sheldon Johnson would have served out the length of his sentence and not killed anyone, and in a just world, you would go live in squalor. You would have to hang your head in shame forever, because your actions, your advocacy for somebody who is clearly an ongoing danger to society led to a gruesome murder. But instead, you're going to wash your hands of it. You're not going to look into the details of the case because it's so stressful to your mental health. And you don't want to feel guilty. All you did was help a murderer get released, allowing him to commit the murder. And it would just be so sad if you had to face up to that reality. So shut up, Josh Dubin. For the rest of your life, people are going to know you for what you've done. You reap what you sow. Your deeds are absolutely clear to everyone, and I'm never going to let you forget it. And every one of these cases, Rodney Reed, who you advocate for later in this particular video, you should be shamed for, and people should treat you with the distrust that you absolutely deserve.
You see, the thing is, the one force field I have around myself is when that's incoming, I'm able to say, okay, thanks for the fuel. I'll never respond to it. Unless you're doing mental health counseling in a prison, unless you're a corrections officer or a police officer, know what it's like to be incarcerated, you have no fucking business giving me your shitty opinion about what you think I am or others that do this work. Get in the arena and do it yourself.
So of course Josh ends up saying, oh well, you have your opinion of what I do, and you know what, you don't know anything. Get in the arena and do it yourself. Well, guess what? I'm in the arena. I'm attaching my name to my beliefs. I'm making my claims, staking out my position on who's guilty, who isn't guilty. And unlike you, with your privileged upbringing, with your so sad life that you never had to face any challenges, therefore you became a white guilty pussy, I actually was wrongfully arrested at 12 years old. I've experienced the dark side of the criminal justice system, and I for damn sure am not going to let you try to castigate the whole of the system, the whole of policing, the whole of prosecutors based on you never having a challenge in your life and feeling like, oh my God, I must have benefited from the white supremacist system.
And I take that with a big grain of salt. I have enough common sense and practical sense to sort of to disregard that. But I have to be a big enough person to look at myself and say, well, what can I learn from this and what could I do better?
Yeah, Dubin, save me the sanctimonious nonsense about how you're such a good person, because again, unlike you, I advocate for guilty people to face the consequences of their actions. If somebody's actually innocent, I would advocate for them too. But guess what? You advocate for guilty people to escape all responsibility. You blame everyone and anyone except for the perpetrator because you fundamentally believe that black people have no agency. In fact, you are the racist. You are the dehumanizer. Let us be clear about that, because I actually accept the fact that Sheldon Johnson is a sentient adult responsible for his own damn actions, and I'm not here to make excuses for him, unlike you. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As usual, if you like this video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Josh Dubin, laughing about the fact that he got a murderer off, just like the Innocence Project's goal is all the time. Till next time.